Afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our second session about understanding the buying process and how customers buy from you. And today we are going to concentrate just on that, understanding how customers buy from you in your market. We're still using an inspiration by Martin Lewis and his book, How Customers Buy. Great book. Again, I urge you to read it, but we are going to sort of have our thoughts on it today. So what will we cover? We'll look at the buying process steps. Some of them are a little bit obvious to people who, if you think about it, none of it is rocket science. But I think it's important to bring that to the fore if you're going to consider that in terms of your key focus of selling. Then we'll look at how you can understand the buying process better in your market, different things you can do, and talk a little bit about deciding when it's best time for you to join the process from your perspective in your market. So let's start with the buying process steps. So essentially, these days, the main difference that happens is that companies tend to do all the preparation for their launching a buying journey themselves internally. They very rarely tend to involve suppliers at that point, whereas in the past they would have needed to because they couldn't have found out the information themselves. We talked in our last webinar about the fact that people now use the internet, which is a great invention, and they can just do their own research and do a lot of stuff without actually even talking to other companies and suppliers. So the sort of things that they would typically look at is scope the project, find decision makers or a champion that's going to run, project manage it, do some market research to find the right companies that do it, the products that might cover what it is that they're looking for, and then identify potential suppliers. Obviously, that varies depending on what it is that they're looking to do. If it's a known product that they've bought before, they might have less preparation to do. They know what they're looking for. They just need to scope it. If they are looking for something new and some advice and some innovation, then they might involve some suppliers that they trust in that first step. But essentially, they will have to do quite a lot of market research and understanding of what's out there to help them as they perceive their issues. So that's the first process, first step in the process even. And the important thing is, the reason we're talking about that is because you need to align your sales process with this. So thinking about what it is that you can do at that point if you get involved or if you find out that a company is looking to go on a buying journey, what can you do to sort of put your company in the forth? I think in most cases, we're probably unaware that this is happening because, as I said, it happens internally. But it's good to know and think about it in that way. The next step where normally a lot of suppliers get involved and get invited is the RFP or request for proposal. So once they are clear on what it is that they're looking for, companies will typically look to approach suppliers and request some proposals, get them in an idea of what companies can do, what they've done in the past, what experience they've got, get some meetings potentially, not always. I mean, if it's a tender process, they might not even have meetings. They might just do it all as a part of a tender process and not have any meetings until they shortlist in the next step. But, a lot of companies do have meetings at that first stage. And obviously, from a sales process perspective, at that stage, you really want to make sure that you do sort of obviously put forward the best proposal you can, case studies and other things that demonstrate your ability to do this well. But certainly if you can, you need to push for meetings where possible, or at least touch base and understand who the decision makers are, because there's going to be more than one person involved and you want to meet with as many as you can. And you really want to sort of make sure your key role is, in terms of selling here, is to get yourself on the shortlist. So do everything you possibly can to do that. But the companies at that stage will sort of read the proposals, maybe have some meetings, then have a shortlist stage, and then decide what their approach is going to be. So that's a really, really key stage. Obviously for the sales department or the salespeople to get involved and try and promote their company and make sure they're shortlisted for the next stage. Once the company has done all of that and done the assessment, they go through an appointing stage. So at that stage, they may not have decided to go with one supplier. They may still have 2, 3, or 4 in a running, but they essentially shortlisted and chosen the approach that they want, the people who basically fit in with that approach, and they will ask for a final proposal to clarify details. They might ask particular questions because something wasn't clear in terms of what your proposal said. Once they sort of going down that route, they'll negotiate terms. So they'll really try to make sure that they get their preferred terms with the supplier. And again, they are probably negotiating with a number of people to get the best price, the best terms, etc. And then at the end of that process, essentially the selling and the buying from a purchasing perspective is going to be completed. So they're going to send a contract to the chosen supplier and start the implementation process, which is the next step. So a couple of things. Obviously, again, this is a really important point for the sales people in terms of doing the presentations. If they get to do a presentation at that point, make sure the negotiation is done correctly, and also make sure that they put forward the reasons why their proposal is right. So to do that, you really have got to think not so much about how wonderful your product is, but more about the buying process, what the concerns are that they've got in terms of implementation, what they really are looking for, what they hold value in. So you can make sure that what you've got is watertight and ties in with this, and that will give you the best chance to win the proposal. So it's important to sort of switch your mindset from thinking that a sales process is the most important thing and that through your selling you will change everything, to understanding that the buyer is in the decisive, I can't talk today, the decisive seat. So they are the ones that are going to make the decisions, and it's going to be based on what they need and what they perceive to be important. So you've got to tie in with that. And if you don't understand that, or you don't take the time to understand that, you will not going to get the sale. So really important to sort of switch the mindset here towards the buying process, as opposed to thinking about your sales process and your wonderful product. So when we get to the implementation process, it's quite important to remember that whilst the salespeople or the sales team might not be involved so much with implementation, once your company is chosen and you need to now implement together with the company and make sure that everything works, they may well move to your operation department. But it's important to remember that there's still a load of process to go through before this is actually a successful project. And I've seen many occasions where people have sold a product. It all hailed to be wonderful, but then it fell over in implementation, and the quality of the implementation, the quality of the delivery wasn't good enough. And often the company may stop and change and start again. So you end up losing the sale. But also it is about reputation for your company, and ensuring obviously that your buyer is happy and that they feel that you're delivering on what you said you will. So as a salesperson, it is really, or as a business owner, it's really important to think about this and make sure that the process here is correct, that you're touching base with your company, that you've developed a relationship with the buyer and also with your delivering team, just to make sure that everything is happening correctly. Is there anything that's been missed out, anything that was misunderstood? And really, I think it's a lot of people, particularly, if it's a small business that you've got, then in most cases you'll be selling and implementing. So it will be you doing all of it. If it's a little bit of a bigger company, then that doesn't always happen, and wires can get crossed. And that's a really important stage to still not let go of. So these are the stages of the buying process. And the idea is to think about, what do you as a sales team need to do at each and every stage to make sure that you sell and then implement successfully. So the other part of what we're going to talk about today is how you can find out more about the buying process in your market. It's all very well to talk about the buying process and understand that it is the key now. It's the key focus for selling and for making sure that you convert more sales. But often we don't necessarily know, and especially if we've not thought about it before, how the buying process happen in your market. And that is a really key thing that you need to change in order to take advantage of the idea of aligning your buying process with the selling process. So there's two things, really, two areas you can look at in terms of understanding the buying process in your market. The first one is around researching your market and trying to get a better understanding generally how companies buy from you. So I think you need to identify the buying triggers that mean that a company is engaged in a buying process, and you probably want to understand the early triggers to try and get on it as soon as possible, to know what you're looking for. So if you're doing any lead generation, you're using any intent data which looks for triggers, you understand those triggers and you can look for them and mark them so you can jump on it and get in there early on. I think the obvious thing is to look at your successful sales projects from the past and see, how did it start? When did you engage? What did they say? What did they need? How did it work? And really try and map the buying journey using those steps that we discussed. Another obvious thing is to ask your clients. If you're not sure, go to your clients, the ones that you've had for a long time to get on with, and just ask them how they initiate a buying process in your market. What did they do? What they feel is the right process, and learn from that. There may well be other available resources on the internet to sort of search and see, key things that people look up when they're buying X. So a little bit of market research to do and learn from. And then the other thing to do, which is really, really important, is to look at your current projects where you've got prospects projects going on, sales projects going on, and make sure that you've got answers to all of these things. So do you know what the project timeline is? What's the next stage? When are they hoping to complete? Do you know all the people that are involved? Again, we talked about that a number of times, because you could be getting on really well with their sales director, but you've never spoken to their operation director, and they have completely different needs and wants. They're a completely different character and need other reassurances, which if you ignore could end up biting you, because they might say that they'd like to work with someone else because they've never met you and they don't trust you. You need to understand their key concerns. So you can, as we said before, with your proposals and your presentations and your communication, you can really look at, ironing those, making sure they understand that your company can deal with those concerns and can do something about it. And also, it's really important to understand what they value, what they think would be successful. So if that project was to be successful, what does it mean to them? And again, ensuring that you take those goals, those values, and show that there's an alignment between your company and theirs, but also show them, that you will be able to make the project a success because you can do certain things to do that. So these questions are really, really key. Really getting it's the biggest goal you have as a salesperson, other than obviously making sure that your company is successful going through the different stages, is to understand all of these elements, because otherwise you can't navigate the buying process and you're basically working blind and just going through, this is how we sell, this is what we do, this is what's important to us, which isn't, unfortunately, the most important thing anymore. So, get going with asking these questions. And then finally, really, you need to understand where you join the carousel in your market, because it really varies between different products and services and different markets. So if you are selling security, for example, you obviously will be looking to join the buying process when there's a tender. So you would want to wait until a company's gone to tender and then go through the process of the tender. And, you know, your job will be to get yourself from step 1, 2, 3, and make sure you're shortlisted and then successful. It's very difficult to join the buying process before a tender's been initiated because of the perceived idea in that market that security is security. So they're not that interested in meeting and talking about it so much with companies before they are actually considering it. So that's the market, that's what they want. And it's very difficult to change that. You're better off going with that, understanding that, and making sure that you're always out there looking for buying signals for companies that are knowing when companies are going to go to tender, and keep in touch with them to make sure that your company is included in that. On the other hand, if you've got a project, a product that is innovative, new, might not be in the market yet, your approach has to be that you need to go in and try to initiate a buying process. So, you know, because your product isn't known or isn't something that people buy on a regular basis, they may well not have a buying process for it. They may not even know they need it. So what you need to be doing is looking at calling companies, getting in touch with them, and really trying to get that interest, and move it on to them actually deciding to buy your product, which is it can be harder and longer, and that needs to be taken into account regarding your sales process as a whole and timescales. So this is a really important question that will come into it when you look at the strategy, the sales strategy, the growth strategy. You really do need to understand that in order to get things right and to be prepared and do the right things. So that is everything that I wanted to cover today in terms of the buying process and how you learn more about it in your market. Hopefully that is helpful. We do have another episode covering the sales and the buying process, in which we will talk about how you actually align your sales process with your buying process. So you've done everything, you understand your buying process better. How do you then take your sales process that's tried and tested and you've used, and make sure that actually it fits in with the buying process, and that the buying process becomes the most important thing for you to work on. We will look at sales goals at each stage. So, you know, what have you got to do as a sales person at each stage to make sure that you move yourself to the next stage. Also, how this affects sales forecasting and how you can make it more accurate using the buying process, and how it will affect your conversion. So we'll hope to see you next time. And thank you very much for your time today.